Tell me about the patterns of anomalous activity that characterize, that define something as an unidentified aerial phenomena, and then tell me what you've concluded as a consequence of your investigations, and where you. Yeah, let's do that.
So there are, let's say, 5 characteristics of something that you would think of as an anomaly. One is instantaneous acceleration and deceleration. Right? There's very few things that we know of that can go from 0 to 5,000 miles an hour and then stop on a dime without squishing everybody on the inside, sending them through the windshield. So when you see these things go from, in the case of the, I think it was the Nimitz or the Eisenhower, goes from sea level to space in less than a second, and they have the radar trackings of those things. And now imagine the size of the object. Let's say it weighs a ton. To instantaneously accelerate and decelerate at that level takes would take the energy of more than the nuclear output of the United States for a year. Okay, so where did you get that energy, first of all? So instantaneous acceleration and deceleration. So seeing things that do zigzags across the sky means that somebody or something has control if it's going fast enough, and it's not doing an arc. It means something has control of momentum and inertia. They can negate momentum and inertia. So that's an observation seen hundreds, if not thousands of times by pilots all over the world. So what does that mean about our understanding of physics, first of all? So that's one thing. The other is no apparent flight surfaces and no apparent exhaust. So no energy output. So you're moving and doing these things, and yet if you look at them with FLIR, which is a kind of infrared, you don't see any hot spots. If you were to look at a jet, all you would see is the plume from the jet. So no flight surfaces, meaning, basically Bernoulli's principle is not at play here, right? Which is basically how the wings work and lift. So Bernoulli's principle is not at play. So you're moving without a flight surface and without an apparent mode of inertia. You're not putting something out so that you can move forward. And then the other one is what you would think of as what's called transmedium travel, meaning something that can go from the water to the air and then back again, or to the air and to space. We have nothing that can do something like that. Recently, there have now been drones made and talked about openly, and actually these are U.S. Drones just shown on I saw on a military video recently, where drones can be underwater, travel, and then come out of the water and go do the attack. But that's only been developed in the last, few years, not something from 50, 60 years ago. So those are the kinds of things that people see. And again, it's you ask me what I think of as real. Those anecdotes are, to me, stories. And why I get interested in the medical or the material side is it's something I can repeat. I can't repeat these pilot observations, but I can repeat experiments on materials or not experiments on human, but reading the humans who've been harmed. Now, the thing about Skywatcher is that we, at least in a limited sense, have a signal that can be released that sometimes it seems to attract these objects. And so that's where the repeatability attempt is coming in.
Explain that a bit more.
So because it's a company and I'm not the official spokesperson for it, and this is public information that's out there, is that there's a signal that an individual as part of Skywatcher had determined when he was working with the military, it wasn't his purpose to develop it, so he didn't take anything out. It was sort of he noticed something and then he refined the technique, and now he knows that he has, let's say, an electromagnetic sequence that he can release that somehow seems to have these things, objects show up. And I was there when it happened. We go out on these week-long events in like the middle of nowhere, and stuff shows up. And some of it's been on. Some of it's you can go find it on Twitter, but the stuff that's on Twitter isn't good enough, in my opinion. I'm more interested in the data that we're more recently collecting with better cameras and better sensor systems, because the idea is just to do the science.
So I think what we'll do on the Daily Wire side, because we have to wrap this up in relatively short order, I want to close here by asking you what you've concluded provisionally as an explanation for this, like what hypotheses you're nursing. And then on the Daily Wire side, for everybody watching and listening, I'd like to ask you more about stories about what you've seen, for example, when you've been on these Skywatch expeditions, and what the Skywatch program is reporting, and then also to delve a bit more into the political. You talked about the Schumer and I don't remember the other senator.
Senator Rounds,
this bipartisan proposal to declassify and make public
some of the information.
The narratives of sightings from pilots in particular. Okay, so we'll delve into that more on the Daily Wire side for everybody watching and listening, so you can join us there for an additional half an hour. To close up here, I think it would be useful for you to let us know, if you would, what the hell you think is going on, and what this has done to you too. This has got to kind of come out of left field, so to speak, in a severe way. And so I imagine it's put a bit of a bump into your life. I mean, maybe one that's mostly interesting, but still, it's, to call it strange is to barely scrape the surface.
Yeah.
So what do you make of this?
That there's something non-human here, and it's been here for a long time, is my provisional conclusion. And the question is not, that people should ask is not, is there something here? You have to ask the question first, can there something be here? And the short answer is, of course there can, because the universe is 14 billion years old. You could have gotten from one side of the galaxy to the other in our galaxy in Elon Musk's Tesla if it were traveling at 10,000 miles an hour, right? But what got on in the first place doesn't mean the same thing as what gets off on the other side. So yes, the short answer is something can be here. What it is, I'm not 100% sure, and I feel very uncomfortable with the sightings of biological beings, if only because they just look a little too much like us, and I just can't see from a genetics point of view why the human form is so, or even 2 legs and 2 arms is necessarily biologically the most successful shape. So I think there's something here. I think the data, the evidence of the hypothesis, there's more than enough evidence to say that it's worth investigating. So I would ask my colleagues to just hold their sarcasm for a while, because how do you deny thousands of reports like this? I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but I did get a phone call from somebody representing the White House because I was talking about something that they felt was a little too on the edge. They said, "You need to just shut up, Gary." I'm just telling you. I've briefed Canadian Parliament. I went to your Parliament in Toronto and I briefed all 3 parties on it. The only ones who didn't want to hear anything were the separatists. So interestingly, but no, I spent 2 days there on that. and we've briefed the European Parliament as well on it, and they're aware of what some of their own military are talking about. So that I conclude that there's definitely something here. But I think the more interesting conclusion is if something is here, it's likely been here longer than humans have even been civilized. So it really opens the question, and actually it's something